We often think of history as something set in stone, written clearly on paper, taught in textbooks, or openly declared by renowned scholars. But the truth might be very different from what we imagine. Sometimes the real history hides in crumbling pages, faded manuscripts, and ancient scrolls of parchment, quietly tucked away in dark vaults, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. There's a place just like that, hidden deep beneath the ground of the Vatican, the oldest center of religious and political power in the Western world. Tucked within the heart of this sacred city lies the Vatican's secret archives, a legendary secretive repository that few have ever been permitted to enter. It's not just a library of important church documents, it's a labyrinth of history itself, a crypt of the past where millions of records lie undisturbed in darkness, guarded silently by the passage of time. And among the countless scrolls and letters, there's a collection of documents so unsettling that simply mentioning them sends chills down your spine. These texts reveal secrets the Roman Empire, one of history's greatest civilizations, never wanted humanity to discover. They contain the darkest truths, scars carefully hidden beneath layers of power and tradition, stories written in blood and erased by fear. The secrets we're about to uncover today aren't vague conspiracy theories. They're meticulously recorded in ancient documents, discovered in letters penned by Roman emperors, influential priests, military dispatches, and even haunting personal diaries. These are pages of history you'll never find in ordinary textbooks because they directly threaten the carefully crafted image of perfection built around the Roman Empire and the Vatican. But before we dive deeper into these unsettling revelations, ask yourself one more time, are you truly ready? Because the truth, once revealed, will forever change how we see history, power, and even our own human nature. It may be dark, it may be painful, but it's necessary if we truly want to understand ourselves and the world we live in. Take a deep breath, step into the shadows, and prepare yourself to discover the deepest secrets hidden within the Vatican archives, where history has never been fully told. On a hot summer night in July of 64 AD, the people of Rome drifted uneasily into sleep. Little did they know, in just a few short hours, massive plumes of smoke would engulf their city, and roaring flames would forever alter the destiny of millions. Official history has long recorded this devastating blaze as a tragic accident ignited by old wooden houses packed tightly together near Circus Maximus, one of Rome's most densely populated and poorest neighborhoods. But hidden deep within the thick walls of the Vatican archives, ancient documents whisper a completely different story. A story considered so sensitive and dangerous that the Vatican itself believed it necessary to keep hidden from the world. Ancient historians such as Tacitus and Suetonius described how the fire spread rapidly, consuming thousands of homes, lavish mansions, shops, and important public buildings. For 6 days and 7 nights, Rome burned relentlessly, leaving behind charred ruins and hundreds of thousands of desperate, homeless citizens. Conventional accounts portray Emperor Nero as being far away from Rome at the time, quickly returning to provide aid, opening up palaces and royal gardens to shelter those who had lost their homes. But is the truth really that simple? Buried within the Vatican archives lies a set of documents that high-ranking clergy have labeled the Acta Neronis, or the Files of Nero. These are confidential records, correspondence between Roman officials that have been kept out of humanity's reach for nearly 2 millennia. These documents don't just portray Nero differently, they also raise some deeply unsettling questions. According to the Acta Neronis, Nero was not at all surprised by the fire. In fact, the emperor had secretly issued orders months before, quietly preparing for these catastrophic days. A series of letters between high-ranking officials in Nero's administration explicitly discusses the urgent need to completely transform the face of Rome, to build a city more glorious, more magnificent, more worthy of the emperor's name. The phrase rebuilding Rome appears repeatedly with an almost ominous implication that to create something new, the old must first be destroyed, a task difficult to achieve without an event shocking enough, catastrophic enough to justify it. These secret letters preserved deep within the Vatican archives describe how Nero dispatched special groups, his own trusted guards disguised as ordinary citizens, to secretly ignite fires throughout Rome. Some documents even vividly describe how these teams used hidden, oil-soaked torches, strategically starting fires that quickly spiraled out of control, overwhelming both residents and firefighters alike. Even more disturbingly, a few confidential writings describe Nero observing the city burning from afar, not with sadness, but with a strange fascination, as if witnessing a grand performance he himself had directed. But perhaps the darkest revelation in these documents isn't just the conspiracy to destroy Rome. It's that Nero immediately sought to shift blame onto a specific group, the Christians, at that time still a marginalized minority in Roman society. A meticulously preserved handwritten record in the Vatican archives describes a secret meeting held shortly after the fire, in which Nero and his closest advisors deliberately plotted to portray the Christians as public enemy number one. It was a calculated strategy, cleverly designed to divert suspicion away from Nero himself. According to these ancient records, Nero then launched one of history's most brutal and systematic persecutions of Christians. Those captured were publicly tortured and executed in horrific ways, used as entertainment in arenas, wrapped in animal skins and torn apart by beasts, crucified or even burned alive as human torches, illuminating the city streets at night. The Vatican archives hold letters detailing these horrifying acts with chilling precision. One official's report sent back to Rome reads, "Never before have we witnessed brutality on such a scale. Innocent people sacrificed without trial, executed merely to fulfill a political agenda understood only by Nero himself." This transforms the Great Fire of Rome from merely a tragic disaster into one of the bloodiest political conspiracies in ancient history, marking the beginning of a deeply painful and haunting relationship between the Roman authorities and Christians that would last for centuries. But among the secret letters, the Vatican archives also hold a shocking document known as the Annales Secreta Neronis, or the Secret Chronicles of Nero. This was essentially a detailed daily diary, supposedly written by Nero's personal secretary, but never publicly released. According to these records, just days after the fire, while smoke still blanketed Rome, Nero secretly summoned the empire's best architects to his palace, ordering them to begin immediately on plans to rebuild Rome into a brand new city he intended to call Neropolis. Ambitious sketches discovered in these hidden folders show a grand, magnificent Rome far greater than before, featuring straight avenues, expansive squares, and monumental buildings. Disturbingly, the areas marked for redevelopment match precisely the neighborhoods most severely damaged by the fire, almost as if every detail had been ruthlessly planned in advance. One chilling detail from this diary stands out. Nero reportedly said something cryptic to the architects as he reviewed the blueprints for Neropolis. "To build paradise, sometimes we must first pass through hell." This lends weight to the theory that Nero not only knew about the fire in advance, but personally orchestrated one of the greatest tragedies in ancient Roman history. Yet these secret Vatican documents also reveal a more complex picture of Nero's psychology. Personal correspondence between Nero and his close confidants, including Empress Poppaea, Sabina, and philosopher Seneca, reveals intense internal struggles following the fire. In a private letter to Seneca preserved deep within the Vatican vault, Nero expressed clear anguish. "Rome is burning, but perhaps it's my own soul that's truly on fire. What have I done to my own people? Will history forgive me or forever curse my name?" Ironically, even Seneca, renowned for his moral integrity, became a victim of Nero's regime, forced by Nero himself to commit suicide. This raises an unsettling question. Was Nero genuinely remorseful, or was he simply a brilliant actor, meticulously controlling his historical narrative through every word written? Regardless, these hidden documents clearly indicate Nero's scapegoating strategy against Christians worked with terrifying effectiveness. The citizens of Rome, grieving and angry, readily accepted the misinformation, leading directly to the first large-scale persecution of Christians, a tragic and defining period in religious history. Ironically, this very persecution inadvertently transformed Christianity into a lasting symbol of endurance and bravery, eventually reshaping the destiny of the entire Western world. Another document in the Vatican archives dating around 68 AD mentions how, immediately following Nero's death, the new government secretly attempted to destroy evidence related to the fire. But these scrolls, copies of letters and personal records, somehow survived, eventually being hidden away deep within the Vatican. This brings up a profound question. Why did the Catholic Church, later one of history's most powerful organizations, feel compelled to conceal these documents so carefully? Was it because the Church realized these revelations might deeply undermine the authority and reputation they'd carefully cultivated for over a millennium? These crumbling pages buried beneath Vatican City continue to whisper their untold stories, and what we've just explored is only the beginning. What other secrets are still waiting in the shadows? Take another step into the darkness, because this journey is just getting started. As the devastating fires of Rome finally burned out, leaving behind nothing but ruins and sorrow, mysterious rituals quietly continued behind the scenes of power. Secret documents hidden deep within the Vatican archives reveal that Nero and Rome's elite didn't just play dangerous games with political power and the fate of their people. They were also deeply immersed in mystical rituals far beyond what most of us could imagine. Among the most chilling documents preserved by the Vatican are those related to Mithraism, a secretive cult particularly popular among Roman soldiers and aristocrats. Even today, little is known about Mithraism because nearly all of its texts, temples, and symbols were deliberately destroyed or hidden away in secret libraries, with the Vatican archives safeguarding most of the surviving documents. But these leaked documents reveal Mithraism was far from a harmless spiritual belief held by soldiers stationed far from home. Behind closed doors, deep in hidden underground chambers, followers of this cult formed terrifying blood rituals involving both animal and even human sacrifices. According to confidential Vatican files, certain ceremonies even involved Rome's most powerful figures, including Nero himself and other emperors who followed. But before diving deeper into these disturbing rituals, it's important to understand exactly what Mithraism was. It was a mysterious cult dedicated to Mithra, a deity originating from ancient Persia, introduced to Rome by soldiers returning from military campaigns in the east. Mithra was worshipped as the sun god, representing immortality, victory, and ultimate power in warfare. For this reason, Mithraism quickly spread, particularly appealing to soldiers and military leaders who believed participating in these secret ceremonies granted them invincible power in battle. Ancient Vatican documents vividly describe Mithra's temples as being built underground, hidden within dark, damp caves discreetly tucked beneath the bustling streets of Rome or within distant military fortresses. Surviving murals, carvings, and statues depict the central ritual of Mithraism. Mithra slaying a bull, symbolizing rebirth, immortality, and victory over death. However, secret Vatican files, only recently leaked, reveal that this ritual wasn't always symbolic. Instead, it crossed moral boundaries, evolving into actual blood sacrifices, accompanied by real bloodshed and whispered prayers in the darkness. According to a Latin text from the 2nd century AD, stored in the Vatican archives under the title Mysterium Sanguinis Mithrae, the mystery of Mithra's blood, these horrific blood rituals were explicitly detailed. The document recounts the terrifying initiation rites followers had to endure. Initiates were blindfolded, led down into hidden chambers beneath the city, and forced to drink blood from silver chalices while witnessing animals, or even human beings, sacrificed directly before their eyes. They believed drinking blood would imbue them with Mithra's divine strength, transforming them into unbeatable warriors. And in the most secretive ceremonies, often held just before major military campaigns, actual human sacrifices reportedly took place, although this was always kept strictly hidden, never documented openly. Another disturbing document from the Vatican archives, written by a Roman official in the 3rd century, explicitly details a human sacrifice that occurred in a secret Mithraic temple on the outskirts of Rome. According to this chilling account, the victims, usually carefully selected prisoners of war or healthy young slaves, were tightly bound and placed on a stone altar. A high priest would carry out the ritual sacrifice using a sharp, curved blade, while other devotees gathered around, fervently praying for Mithra's power and blessings. What's particularly striking here is that these rituals weren't just religious acts, they were deeply political. Mithraism became a powerful tool used by Rome's elite to strengthen their grip on power and control the mindset of the military, creating soldiers and officials willing to obey commands without question. They truly believed they were protected and guided by the divine hand of Mithra himself. This explains precisely why the Vatican, when it rose to prominence as the center of Western power centuries later, chose to carefully seal away every document related to Mithraism. It wasn't merely the gruesome and morally disturbing nature of these blood sacrifices that troubled church leaders, it was also the fear that revealing these secrets would seriously undermine the moral authority and spiritual credibility the Catholic Church had carefully constructed. In the 4th century, when Christianity became the official religion under Emperor Constantine, Mithraism faced severe persecution. Hundreds of Mithraic temples across the empire were destroyed or permanently sealed. Followers were forced to convert or face execution. All secret documents and texts detailing Mithraic rituals were confiscated and moved to secure vaults deep within the Vatican. For the early church, Mithraism represented a direct threat, not just as religious competition, but because it exposed a dark, violent aspect of human nature, something the Church desperately wanted, hidden behind a facade of morality and divine light. A chilling letter preserved in the Vatican archives, written by a senior church official in the 5th century, openly states, "The rituals of Mithra must remain forever buried, not merely to protect the faith, but to conceal the terrifying truth that even supposedly civilized people once worshipped their gods through bloodshed and suffering." Copies describing Mithric ceremonies later discovered in ancient libraries under Vatican control revealed even more shocking details about the cult's dark rituals. One ancient text, known as the Liber Mithrae, Book of Mithra, written in ancient Greek, vividly described initiation rituals performed on Roman soldiers. Initiates faced 7 stages of increasingly symbolic yet horrifying violence. At the highest level, called pater, initiates personally participated in blood sacrifices, sometimes required to carry out killings themselves, to prove their absolute loyalty and devotion to Mithra. Paintings and carvings depicting these terrifying rites are still stored in the Vatican archives today. They were typically drawn on the walls of hidden caves or carved into large stone slabs placed deep underground. These haunting images depict Mithra slaying the sacred bull, followers drinking blood from chalices, and, most disturbing of all, explicit scenes of human sacrifice. These visuals weren't just symbolic, they were brutally realistic, explaining exactly why the Vatican never dared to publicly disclose them. Researchers granted limited access to these documents often describe being overwhelmed by their sheer brutality and vividness. Several historians who've directly examined these ancient texts admitted to being shocked. One even wrote, even by ancient standards, the rituals described in these Mithraic documents are shockingly brutal. It's completely understandable why, even after thousands of years, the Church keeps these secrets so fiercely guarded. But an important question still lingers. Why did Mithraism, a cult that once spread so widely, vanish almost without a trace? Was it simply due to persecution, or was there a deeper, more hidden reason? Certain confidential files within the Vatican archives hint at a theory that Mithraism's close connection to political and military power made it dangerous even to its own adherents. When emperors, after Nero, realized Mithraism didn't just solidify their control, but could also trigger terrifying conspiracies or coup attempts, they began to see the religion as a double-edged sword. Many Roman emperors after Nero quietly attempted to erase Mithraism from history altogether, destroying documents, executing high-ranking priests, and sealing secret temples forever. One emperor particularly ruthless toward Mithraism was Theodosius I, who ruled in the late 4th century. Documents stored in the Vatican archives reveal he directly ordered special military units to systematically destroy Mithraic temples and erase every trace of the religion across the entire empire. Priests were captured and executed by the hundreds, valuable manuscripts were burned, and any remaining evidence was quietly shipped to Rome, sealed inside the Vatican archives, and forbidden from ever being released. And so, Mithraism gradually faded from humanity's collective memory, becoming something of a ghost religion, a phantom of history, remembered only through whispered legends and rare documents occasionally leaked from the depths of the Vatican archives. The dark secrets of blood rituals and sacrifices beneath the surface of Mithraism are only a small fraction of what the Vatican has quietly hidden for centuries. As we journey deeper into this mysterious labyrinth, we come face to face with one of history's most controversial events, the execution of Jesus Christ. But this time, the story isn't told from the familiar perspective of the Bible. Instead, it emerges from secret documents, ancient records the Vatican has always guarded closely and kept hidden from public view. In a small, secure room buried deep beneath the Vatican archives lies a set of sealed documents called the Acta Pilati, the Pilate Files. These are not newly discovered writings. Rather, they've been sitting silently in the shadows for nearly 2,000 years, authored by scribes directly under the command of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea during the early 1st century. Pontius Pilate has long been a controversial figure. In the Bible, he's portrayed as indifferent and reluctant, ordering the execution of Jesus merely to appease the angry crowds and religious leaders. But the secret Acta Pilati reveals a very different Pilate, a shrewd, calculating politician who was keenly aware of any potential threat to stability in the region under his control. In these ancient pages, written in Latin mixed with Greek, there's a detailed and explicit report sent by Pilate to Rome shortly after Jesus' crucifixion. This was an official dispatch directly addressed to Emperor Tiberius, carefully justifying the risky political decision Pilate had made. According to this ancient record, Pilate described Jesus as a figure posing a significant potential threat to public order and security in Judea. Pilate had been closely monitoring Jesus through spies and confidential informants for quite some time, attempting to fully grasp the nature of the movement Jesus led. He paid particular attention to Jesus' teachings about the kingdom of heaven, and especially the phrase, King of the Jews, which Rome interpreted as a dangerous and direct challenge to its absolute authority. Most importantly, the Acta Pilati makes it clear that Pilate did not consider Jesus' execution to be forced upon him. Instead, he viewed it as a calculated political maneuver. Pilate wrote explicitly, Jesus of Nazareth was not simply an innocent prophet, but the focal point of a political movement capable of inciting revolt against Rome. Pilate feared that unless swiftly and decisively suppressed, Jesus' following would quickly spread, igniting a full-scale rebellion in Judea, a notoriously unstable and difficult-to-control region. Another striking part of this document details the pressures Pilate faced from both local Jewish leaders and senior Roman officials in Syria and Rome. Pilate knew that a rebellion under his watch would effectively end his political career. Thus, executing Jesus wasn't merely about satisfying Jewish priests. It was a powerful message to anyone considering challenging the total authority of the Roman Empire. So why has the Vatican, the most powerful organization in Christianity, kept these facts secret for centuries? The answer lies deep within the complex nature of the Catholic Church itself. The Vatican's secrecy around Pilate's files is due to fears that these documents could dramatically alter how the world perceives the death of Jesus. Instead of a sacred, divine sacrifice as portrayed in the Bible, these confidential reports depict his execution as a purely political, cold-blooded, and carefully calculated decision. This revelation could lead to profound questions about the role the Roman authorities played in the early formation of Christianity, as well as how the Catholic Church has shaped billions of followers' understanding of history. The secret Vatican documents also reveal that Pilate's files once sparked fierce debates within the Church itself. Some senior church leaders in early Christianity considered these documents too dangerous and argued they should be permanently destroyed. Others believed Pilate's writings must be preserved as crucial historical evidence, even if they risked controversy or damage to the Church's image. Ultimately, the Vatican opted for a compromise, to preserve the documents but keep them permanently sealed, granting only a tiny number of carefully supervised scholars limited access. This decision is precisely why these records still exist, yet remain hidden from the eyes of most of humanity even to this day. Another fascinating detail hidden within the secret Acta Pilati files is a meticulous description of the private encounter between Pontius Pilate and Jesus, an encounter only briefly touched upon in the Bible but richly detailed in these secret Vatican documents. According to these ancient records, Pilate conducted a lengthy and intense interrogation, not just a few simple questions, but a profound discussion about power, politics, and faith itself. In this secret dialogue, Jesus is portrayed as charismatic, intelligent, and remarkably insightful. Pilate asked Jesus directly about the true meaning behind the phrase, "King of the Jews," and whether Jesus was plotting against Caesar. Jesus answered calmly but with deep implications, saying, "My kingdom is not of this world, and my power does not come from fear or oppression, but from truth." Pilate was startled and confused by this response, but he also sensed an immediate and serious threat. For a seasoned political leader like Pilate, any truth that didn't originate from Roman authority represented a danger that needed to be swiftly extinguished. According to these confidential records, after the interrogation, Pilate concluded that although Jesus didn't seem interested in armed rebellion, his teachings posed an even greater danger. Jesus' message had the potential to shake the very foundations of power and belief throughout Judea. In Pilate's official report to Rome, he described the execution of Jesus as an essential condition for maintaining peace and stability in this province. Pilate's records not only reveal a clearer political motivation behind the most famous execution in history, they also illuminate the complex tensions between Rome and emerging religious and political movements of the time. The Roman authorities generally cared little about people's religious beliefs, but they were deeply sensitive to any ideology capable of challenging Caesar's absolute authority. These secret files underscore precisely why the Vatican has always kept them hidden from public view. If the world learned that Jesus' execution was primarily political rather than purely religious, as commonly believed, it would complicate the sacred image of divine sacrifice and holy suffering carefully constructed by the Catholic Church over 2,000 years. The Vatican also feared that revealing these documents could undermine the theological foundations of Christianity itself. If Jesus were perceived as a political victim rather than an entirely divine figure, the spiritual meaning and symbolism of the cross might fundamentally shift. In another secret letter from the 4th century, Pope Damasus I clearly expressed why Pilate's files need absolute secrecy. He wrote, "We are not protecting Pilate. We are protecting the greater truth upon which the Church is built. The world requires absolute faith, which must not be shaken by documents rooted in earthly politics." Even today, the Vatican steadfastly adheres to this principle. The secret Pilate documents can only be studied under extremely strict supervision. Each page is numbered and tightly controlled, and scholars who examine these files are forbidden from taking notes or making copies of any kind. Yet the more the Vatican attempts to hide these truths, the more the world becomes curious and asks critical questions. Why must an event considered foundational to Christianity remain shrouded in such secrecy? Is the Vatican afraid of the truth, or is it simply protecting an image that it believes the world needs to trust? Ultimately, these secret documents about Jesus' execution from Pilate's own perspective may not change the faith of billions of believers worldwide. However, they unquestionably prompt us to reflect more deeply about the nature of history, power, and truth itself, because sometimes the truth we know is just a tiny piece of a much larger story, a story still hidden carefully within the mysterious underground vaults of the Vatican archives. After exploring the political secrets behind the execution of Jesus from Pontius Pilate's perspective, we've seen how power can radically alter our understanding of even the most sacred historical events. But the Vatican archives don't merely hold secrets about religion and politics. Hidden deeper still are horrors that would make even the bravest souls shudder. Within the darkest, most secluded sections of the Vatican archives lie medical documents from ancient Rome, records so disturbing that even scholars allowed to study them find themselves recoiling in shock and disgust. These manuscripts vividly describe brutal live dissections and horrific medical experiments performed on slaves, prisoners of war, and even innocent civilians, all justified under the pretense of scientific advancement and medical progress. At the heart of these chilling documents is a name familiar to anyone acquainted with Western medical history: Claudius Galenus, more commonly known simply as Galen. He was the most famous physician of the ancient world, whose medical texts dominated Western medicine for over 1,000 years. Galen has been celebrated as a genius, a father of modern medicine, renowned for his deep insights into the human body. But secret Vatican documents reveal a far darker story about Galen and his colleagues. Behind the shining reputation and significant contributions to medicine lies a hidden reality, a story of cruelty hidden in secret laboratories deep underground. According to an ancient Greek manuscript carefully preserved in the Vatican archives titled Experimenta Anatomica, Anatomical Experiments, Galen and his fellow physicians conducted brutal live dissections on prisoners of war and slaves to understand precisely how the human body functioned. The document describes these experiments in chilling, explicit detail, noting that victims were often tightly bound to stone tables, sometimes fully awake and completely aware of what was about to happen to them. These experiments weren't limited to mere observation. They included horrifying tests, such as the removal of living organs, measuring responses to intense pain, and even testing individuals' endurance against extreme physical torture. All these actions were justified by the stated goal: documented by Galen himself, of gaining a deeper understanding of human anatomy and resilience. One particularly haunting account describes an unnamed young slave who was kept conscious while Galen opened his chest cavity to directly observe the beating heart and lungs. The slave's extreme suffering was described with cold, clinical detachment, as if it was simply another scientific observation. Even more disturbingly, Galen wasn't alone in these practices. Secret records reveal that the Roman Empire had an extensive system of hidden medical schools and research institutes dedicated specifically to conducting these horrific experiments. Vatican documents reference the existence of a clandestine Special Institute of Anatomy, Anatomica Specialis, operating secretly under direct sponsorship from Rome's political elite and military leaders. This institute's purpose was to gather medical insights impossible to obtain through conventional methods of the time. These actions were never openly publicized, even in ancient Rome, precisely because their creators understood their own inhumanity. Ancient texts make it clear that only a tiny circle of Rome's most powerful leaders knew about these horrific experiments, while the general population remained completely unaware. Galen and his fellow physicians lived double lives, publicly renowned for their genius and contributions to humanity, while privately carrying secrets so horrifying they took them to their graves. According to secret records stored deep within the Vatican archives, Galen didn't just carefully document his medical findings. He also meticulously described the selection process used to choose victims for these experiments. Healthy prisoners of war, young men, and particularly foreigners, captured in battle were prioritized. Some victims were specifically chosen because of unique physical attributes or unusual physiological features that Galen and his colleagues wanted to study. Another document in the Vatican's archives, titled Liber Mortis et Doloris, the Book of Death and Pain, written in Latin around the 2nd century AD, records in chilling detail over 300 live anatomical experiments conducted by Roman physicians under Galen's supervision or direct command. These cold, objective notes even contain comments about the feelings of the doctors themselves as they performed these horrific acts. One young physician involved wrote openly, "At first, I felt sickened by what I saw, but gradually my heart hardened. Witnessing suffering became routine because I understood that this pain served science, served a greater glory." The most horrifying aspect of these documents is the attitude these ancient scientists held toward their subjects. They did not see their victims as human beings, but merely as living objects, research subjects, and nothing more. To Galen and his colleagues, those being dissected alive, cut open while fully conscious and experiencing excruciating pain, were simply necessary steps in their quest for knowledge. So why has the Vatican kept these documents hidden for so long? The reason lies deeply rooted within the very nature of the Catholic Church itself. For centuries, the Vatican has worked to portray the ancient world as a civilization that could harmonize with faith, morality, and humanity, revealing that celebrated historical figures like Galen, the so-called father of Western medicine, once committed such horrifying acts would shake the foundations of the ethical values the Vatican has long sought to promote. Moreover, the Vatican understands that if the public learned of these deeply inhumane practices, endorsed and supported by Roman authorities, it would severely damage the image of ancient civilization itself, the very foundation of Western culture. Since the Catholic Church later considered itself the heir to Roman civilization, exposing this information would essentially be tearing down the moral and historical foundation the Church painstakingly built over 2 millennia. Indeed, secret files reveal that the early Church quickly recognized the danger posed by these medical records. A letter written in the 4th century by a bishop named Marcus Aurelius Clemens, addressed directly to the Vatican, clearly states, "The horrific experiments carried out by Roman physicians, no matter how they are justified by science or any other reason, are crimes before the eyes of God. These records must be destroyed or permanently sealed, not just to protect the Church's reputation, but to safeguard the conscience of humanity itself." Ultimately, the Vatican chose to preserve these documents, but under absolute secrecy. Access was restricted to a carefully selected handful of scholars, each of whom had to swear a strict vow of silence about what they discovered. Even then, scholars were permitted to view only limited, carefully chosen portions of the texts. The story of Galen and his inhumane medical experiments is more than just historical. It's a stark warning about the ethical limits of science. It reminds us that even the greatest geniuses, the most brilliant minds humanity has produced, can become blinded by the allure of power and knowledge to the point of completely abandoning compassion and basic humanity. Now, before we move forward, ask yourself, have we truly learned the lessons from our past? Or are we still repeating these same mistakes today, perhaps in subtler ways, hidden more carefully behind closed doors? The disturbing accounts of Galen's vivisections have only scratched the surface of the dark secrets the Roman Empire tried desperately to hide. But as we delve deeper into the shadowy corridors of the Vatican archives, we encounter stories even more haunting, atrocities committed during Rome's ruthless campaigns of territorial expansion, acts of systematic cultural genocide that official histories have nearly forgotten. Carefully preserved in a small, dimly lit chamber within the Vatican archives lies a secret military file labeled Expugnatio Barbarorum, the annihilation of the barbarians. Inside this file are confidential reports from Roman generals detailing mass extermination campaigns conducted in the regions of Gaul, modern-day France, and Dacia, present-day Romania. These documents were never intended for public eyes. They were internal records sent directly back to Rome and quietly hidden away because they contained shocking truths the Roman government never wanted revealed. Among the most chilling documents is a secret report written by Julius Caesar himself concerning the conquest of Gaul, specifically the devastating campaign against the city of Alesia. Caesar wrote, "We have utterly destroyed the city. Those who survived have nothing left but to weep upon the ashes. Their temples have been razed, their gods toppled from their altars, and any symbol reminding them of their past has been burned to the ground. We are not merely conquering their land, we are erasing their culture and their memory, ensuring that Rome becomes their sole homeland." These actions weren't random or spontaneous. They were part of a deliberate policy, meticulously planned by high-ranking commanders in Rome. In a secret letter Caesar sent to Rome in 52 BC, he bluntly stated, "Only when every trace of Gaul's past has been wiped clean can we truly claim victory. To achieve this, every method, no matter how brutal, is justified." A similar story unfolded in Dacia during the 2nd century AD under Emperor Trajan. The Vatican archives still hold confidential military reports from Trajan detailing his ruthless campaign against the Dacians, a proud people known for their wealth and defiance. To ensure complete conquest, Trajan ordered not only mass slaughter but also the systematic erasure of all cultural and religious traces. A military dispatch sent to Rome from the commander of the 13th Legion explicitly reported, "We have utterly destroyed all major temples in their capital, Sarmizegetusa. All inscriptions on stone and bronze have been obliterated. Every text belonging to the Dacian people has been burned so thoroughly that none can read them again. From this day forward, the memory of Dacia will only be what Rome chooses to record." The Vatican archives even contain original military maps drawn by Roman strategists before these campaigns began. On these maps, temples, religious shrines, and important cultural centers were clearly marked as primary targets for destruction. This was not conventional warfare, it was cultural warfare, a deliberate strategy aimed at completely wiping out a people by destroying all spiritual and cultural markers of their existence. Perhaps the most unsettling revelation from the secret Vatican archives is the direct involvement of Roman priests and religious advisors in these genocidal campaigns. Roman clergy didn't merely follow the armies to pray for victory. They actively guided the destruction of temples and sacred writings of conquered peoples, ensuring these populations could never return to their original faiths. The Vatican hasn't kept these documents simply for their historical value. Instead, their primary concern has always been the fear that revealing such brutal truths would severely damage the image of Roman civilization, a civilization the Church has long presented as a foundational pillar of Western culture. If the world discovered that Rome conducted such large-scale cultural genocides, the proud and noble image of Western civilization itself would be shaken to its core. In fact, secret Vatican documents reveal that senior church officials recognized the sensitive nature of these records as early as the 5th century. In a confidential letter sent back to Rome around 440 AD, a bishop named Lucius Valerianus wrote explicitly, "We cannot allow anyone outside to see these documents. If the world learns the truth about what Rome has done to other nations, it would not only shame the Church, but could also destroy the very faith we have worked so hard to build." Because of this, the Vatican carefully preserved original military maps, reports, and detailed accounts of the cultural destruction campaigns in Gaul and Dacia, keeping them locked away in windowless, highly secured chambers deep within the archives. Access to these documents has always been extremely restricted, limited to a select few, scholars handpicked and closely supervised by the Vatican itself. One of the most haunting details in these records is the astonishing efficiency with which Roman generals executed their plans to obliterate the sacred writings and languages of conquered peoples. For example, the people of Dacia once had a well-developed writing system known as Old Dacian script. Yet, after Emperor Trajan's devastating campaign, this script virtually disappeared. A military report sent back to Rome bluntly declared, "We have succeeded in completely erasing the written language of the Dacians. Nobody left alive here can read or write in that barbaric script. Their only option now is to learn and speak the language of Rome." This was not merely conventional warfare, it was a calculated effort to permanently erase the memory and culture of an entire nation. That's precisely why the Vatican understood that if these documents ever became public knowledge, it would deeply undermine the image of Rome as the birthplace of Western civilization, and by extension, severely damage the moral credibility of the Catholic Church itself, which always saw itself as the heir to Rome's legacy. Yet perhaps the most chilling aspect of these secret documents isn't simply the brutality of these cultural genocides, but the cold, utterly indifferent attitude of Roman leaders toward the conquered peoples. One secret letter sent by a Roman general back to Rome after completing the campaign in Gaul stated clearly, "Our task is complete. We no longer need to fear the Gauls rising up again. They've lost everything, their language, their culture, their gods, and even their pride. Now they're fully Roman, not by choice, but because we've left them with no other choice." These words serve as a chilling reminder that the history we know is often only a carefully edited version. The Vatican archives preserve these records not merely for historical interest, but as a powerful warning about how absolute power, when unchecked, can lead humanity down a path of unspeakable consequences. As we've unraveled the chilling secrets behind Rome's cultural genocides, we've witnessed how absolute power wasn't just directed outward, It often struck at the empire's very heart, deep within Rome's palaces and shadowy halls of power. Hidden deep within Vatican archives are a series of secret files marked with special symbols, documents so sensitive and dangerous they could rewrite Roman history itself. These files concern the mysterious deaths of some of Rome's most famous emperors, Augustus, Claudius, and Caracalla, men officially recorded as dying from natural causes or unclear circumstances. But is this the full truth, or does the Vatican archives conceal darker, more sinister realities? In a closely sealed file labeled Mortes Caesarum, Deaths of the Caesars, Vatican scholars uncovered ancient records detailing precisely how these emperors truly met their end. Far from mere legends or official history, these confidential reports document secret investigations ordered by their successors or powerful insiders. Emperor Augustus, the revered founder of the Roman Empire, died in 14 AD at the age of 75, officially attributed to old age. Yet secret records in the Vatican archives paint a far darker scenario. According to these files, in the final months of his life, Augustus became deeply suspicious that his own wife, the cunning and ambitious Livia, was secretly poisoning him to ensure her son, Tiberius, inherited the throne. One secret entry explicitly notes the emperor began exhibiting strange symptoms, severe stomach pains, vomiting, and extreme fatigue, symptoms consistent with slow arsenic poisoning or a similar deadly toxin. Another secret letter, written by one of Augustus's closest officials to a trusted friend in Rome and hidden carefully by the Vatican, expresses alarm at Livia's sinister intentions. He grows weaker each day, suspiciously so. I fear her hand is guiding everything from the shadows, and soon Augustus will be gone. Indeed, Augustus died shortly afterward, and Tiberius immediately ascended to power. Any suspicion or private investigations into Augustus's death were swiftly crushed by the absolute authority of the new emperor and the influential Empress Livia. The Vatican has kept these documents hidden, knowing their release would profoundly shake the foundations of Roman history, which has always portrayed Augustus as untouchable and noble. Similarly shrouded in mystery is the death of Emperor Claudius, who ruled from 41 to 54 AD. Official history claims he was poisoned by his wife Agrippina, enabling her son Nero to ascend the throne. However, the Vatican archives contain even more revealing evidence. Private letters exchanged between Agrippina and her closest confidants, meticulously outlining her scheme to poison Claudius using a rare, untraceable mushroom. In one chilling letter, carefully guarded by the Vatican for centuries, Agrippina wrote secretly to a trusted maid, "We must do this with absolute precision. Claudius's death must leave no suspicion behind. My son must ascend without anyone suspecting foul play." Once Claudius died, every trace of the poisoning was swiftly erased. Witnesses were silenced or bribed, and Nero smoothly stepped into power. The Vatican understands perfectly that releasing these letters would completely alter history's perception of this turbulent era. The final shocking case detailed in these secret files concerns the assassination of Emperor Caracalla, who ruled from 198 to 217 AD. History books traditionally record that he was spontaneously murdered by a bodyguard while relieving himself on a military campaign. But the Vatican's hidden files reveal that this assassination was far from spontaneous. It was the outcome of a carefully orchestrated conspiracy involving Rome's most powerful court figures. One confidential entry describes how top officials and certain royal family members secretly agreed to assassinate Caracalla, deeply alarmed by his increasing paranoia and cruelty, fearing he would plunge the empire into disaster. Among the most startling documents is a secret correspondence between senior Roman generals, explicitly outlining the assassination plan and naming those who masterminded it. Caracalla grows more dangerous by the day, executing even his closest allies at the slightest hint of suspicion. We can no longer allow this madman to rule. The assassination must be swift and precise, leaving no trail leading back to us. According to these hidden records, the actual assassin, an officer named Julius Martialis, was merely a small pawn in a much larger scheme. Martialis acted strictly under orders, and immediately after successfully killing Caracalla, he was swiftly eliminated to prevent any possibility of exposing those behind the conspiracy. The secret documents stored deep within the Vatican archives don't merely reveal the shocking truths behind these imperial assassinations, they also provide clear evidence that the Roman Empire routinely and systematically used poison as a political tool. A detailed file titled De Beneficiis Caesarum, on the poisonings of emperors, specifically lists dozens of different toxins employed by Roman court officials, including arsenic and numerous other sophisticated chemical compounds expertly crafted by the imperial physicians. What's particularly chilling in these files are meticulous notes describing how poisons were prepared and administered in ways that made victims' deaths appear completely natural or caused by sudden illness. Court doctors and chemists are portrayed almost as skilled artists, masters not only at concocting deadly substances, but also at disguising causes of death so flawlessly that suspicion never arose. So why has the Vatican kept these disturbing facts hidden for nearly 2,000 years? A major part of the answer lies in their fear that exposing these ruthless political conspiracies would severely damage Rome's image as a symbol of civilization, order, and morality, an image the Vatican has always sought to protect. But even more fundamentally, the Vatican worried that revealing these documents would shake public confidence in the legitimacy of political authority inherited from ancient Rome itself. In a confidential letter preserved carefully in the Vatican archives from the late 6th century, a high-ranking bishop expressed this concern explicitly. If these documents ever become widely known, we will lose our claim as heirs to a civilization founded upon justice and morality. Rome was not just a great empire, it was a symbol of moral authority. We cannot allow history to remember Rome as a place filled with ruthless conspiracies and assassinations. This explains why the Vatican has kept these files tightly sealed, permitting only a select few historians and scholars limited access under strict supervision. Those allowed to examine the documents must swear absolute secrecy regarding what they see. Even more intriguingly, the Vatican archives contain correspondence and documents detailing past Vatican efforts to prevent the release of these secret assassination records. One particularly striking letter from the 17th century, written by a high-ranking cardinal, directly orders, "Under no circumstances are documents relating to the assassinations of Caesars permitted to leave the Holy See. Any person attempting to disclose these secrets will be permanently excommunicated and punished by any means necessary." This clearly demonstrates that even in more recent centuries, the Vatican remained fiercely committed to controlling knowledge about Rome's dark past. The Vatican fully understands that history is not merely a record of events that took place, but rather a narrative shaped by what we choose to reveal and what we strive to hide forever. From the bloody assassinations inside Roman palaces, we now step into another shadowy realm, one where political power used not only poison and daggers, but wielded an even more subtle and powerful weapon, religion. Hidden deep within the Vatican archives, carefully guarded behind layers of security, is a special collection titled Epistulae Constantini, the Letters of Constantine. This collection contains secret correspondences exchanged between Emperor Constantine, the first Roman emperor to officially legalize Christianity, and the highest-ranking Christian bishops of the early 4th century. These letters reveal a dramatically different story from the one we've been traditionally told. Christianity was not simply embraced by Constantine out of genuine faith. Rather, it was the result of a calculated political deal, a historical bargain between Rome's powerful emperor and the early Christian church. These letters, some written in Greek, others in Latin, explicitly show how Constantine saw Christianity primarily as a strategic tool to unify his deeply divided empire. In a particularly revealing letter addressed to a senior bishop named Eusebius in the year 313 AD, Constantine bluntly stated, "I have little interest in theological debates, but I see clearly that this new faith has greater potential to unify my people than any legion of soldiers. If you can help me stabilize the empire, I will ensure Christianity takes its rightful place in Rome." What stands out here isn't just Constantine's pragmatic approach, but also how explicitly he viewed Christianity as a political solution, a tool more effective for managing public sentiment than military conquest. The Vatican archives have kept these letters hidden precisely because they pose a deep and uncomfortable question. Did Christianity truly flourish due to genuine faith, or was it skillfully leveraged as a political instrument in the hands of a powerful emperor? One of the most significant events detailed in these secret letters is the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, an event that shaped Christianity as we know it today. Official history states that the council was convened purely to resolve theological disagreements within early Christianity. But the secret Vatican documents tell a far more complex truth. The Council of Nicaea was a sophisticated political event, carefully orchestrated by Constantine himself to unify religious belief and thus solidify his own absolute power. Another secret letter from Constantine to his closest officials shortly before the Council of Nicaea made this point explicitly clear. If we intend to use Christianity as the new foundation of the empire, these bishops must agree on a single, unified system of belief. Any disagreement will weaken Rome's unity. I demand that the bishops reach consensus at this council by whatever means necessary. Secret Vatican records clearly show that Constantine leveraged his immense political authority to pressure the bishops at Nicaea, forcing them to agree on key theological points, particularly the divinity of Jesus Christ. Anyone who refused faced immediate expulsion or even direct threats. An internal document from the Council of Nicaea, kept hidden for centuries in the Vatican archives, plainly states, "The emperor issued an unmistakable command. Those refusing to sign the new statement of faith will not only be expelled from the council, but regarded as enemies of the empire itself. We had no choice but to comply." From this council emerged the declaration of faith known today as the Nicene Creed, becoming the foundation of Orthodox Christianity. Yet perhaps the most critical outcome of Nicaea, kept secret for generations, was Constantine and the senior bishops' carefully calculated move. They decided precisely which texts would become part of the official Bible and which would be permanently discarded from history. According to the secret documents hidden deep within the Vatican archives, Constantine and his religious advisors deliberately removed dozens of sacred texts they believed were incompatible with the official belief system, or simply too dangerous to their political power. One confidential letter, written by a bishop attending the council, explicitly states, "We discarded many writings not because they were false, but because they posed too great a threat to the empire's stability. If the people were allowed to read them, they'd start asking questions we simply could not answer." For precisely this reason, the Vatican has kept these documents hidden for over a millennium. They know that releasing these letters would profoundly challenge the accepted origins of the Bible, a book billions have come to trust unconditionally. It raises an unsettling question: is the Bible we know today truly the Word of God, or merely the result of a cunning political bargain struck during that sweltering summer of 325 AD in Nicaea? The secret letters and private notes from the Vatican archives don't just reveal how Constantine and the early Christian bishops edited the Bible, they also provide detailed evidence of how these texts were carefully selected and compiled, deliberately strengthening the authority of both the Church and the Roman Empire. In an ancient Greek manuscript specifically marked Acta Secreta Nicaena, secret records of the Council of Nicaea, there are detailed notes from a private meeting held separately from the official council proceedings. Here, Constantine and several high-ranking bishops privately discussed eliminating texts deemed politically destabilizing or potentially divisive within the Church itself. One bishop wrote clearly in his personal notes, "The Emperor made it absolutely clear we must be careful in choosing these sacred texts. Any book advocating rebellion against authority or questioning Rome's right to rule must be eliminated immediately. Our goal is stability and unity, not absolute truth." Texts such as the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas, and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, widely circulated before Constantine's reign, were intentionally removed from the official biblical canon. According to these secret records, the primary reason was that these Gospels encouraged readers to seek spiritual truth within themselves, an idea Constantine saw as dangerously threatening to the empire's centralized authority. Instead, Constantine and his advisors carefully selected writings that emphasized centralized religious and political power, underscoring absolute submission to God, and implicitly to Rome itself. In a private letter, Constantine sent directly to Bishop Eusebius, the chief editor of the biblical texts at Nicaea, he stated explicitly, "I require a clear and unified Bible, leaving no room for doubt about authority and obedience. The people must understand their position in our social order and never question my authority or that of the Church." These secret documents provoke a profound question. Is the Bible we know today truly purely sacred and unquestionable text, or simply the outcome of political negotiations, strategic decisions, and power struggles carefully hidden for nearly 2,000 years? But why has the Vatican been so determined to keep these letters and confidential records hidden for so long? In another classified document from the 9th century, a senior bishop in Rome clearly explained why the Vatican must never reveal these materials. If the truth about how the Bible was created ever becomes widely known, the faith of every believer would be shaken to its very foundations. We are not merely protecting the Church, we are preserving the entire social order we've painstakingly built over many centuries. This is precisely why the Vatican archives not only keep these documents secret, but strictly control access to them. Scholars granted permission to study these texts must agree to exceptionally stringent conditions, including an absolute ban on revealing what they've uncovered. Those who violate this commitment are immediately expelled and face severe consequences. The Vatican understands perfectly well that if the historical bargain between Constantine and the early Church were ever exposed, it wouldn't just shake Christianity's theological foundations, it would lead the public to deeply question the Church's role in shaping political and social power across the last 2 millennia. From Constantine's secret bargain with the early Church, we've seen how intricately political and religious power intertwine. Yet the Vatican archives don't just reveal secrets about Christianity, they also expose how even ancient mythology, those seemingly innocent stories of Roman gods, were carefully manipulated and edited into powerful political tools wielded by ambitious emperors. Hidden deep within the Vatican's underground libraries lies a special collection known as Mythologia Imperialis, Imperial Mythology. This secluded vault preserves some of the earliest original versions of Roman myths, texts which over centuries were systematically altered and restructured by emperors and their court officials to serve political agendas. These documents reveal clearly that from the reign of Augustus onward, reshaping mythology to strengthen political authority became a deliberate, sophisticated strategy. Augustus recognized that myths weren't mere entertainment. They shaped the very way citizens understood the world, their rulers, and their own place within society. In a secret letter Augustus wrote to his closest advisor, Marcus Agrippa, he openly stated, "We must make the people believe that I have been chosen by the gods themselves. We will rewrite our myths, ensuring each story emphasizes one thing above all, my absolute power as divine and inviolable." As a result, famous myths like those of Romulus and Remus, the god Mars, and even Jupiter himself were carefully edited and reshaped to glorify Augustus and solidify his authority. An older, secret version preserved within the Vatican archives depicts Romulus and Remus not merely as twins raised by a she-wolf, but as symbolic representatives of balanced power, embodying the older republican values of Rome. Yet in Augustus's revised version, Romulus alone became the supreme symbol of absolute power, founding Rome not through courage or valor, but by divine authority granted directly by the gods themselves. The most compelling proof of this deliberate mythological editing lies within ancient documents secretly preserved in the Vatican archives. These papers show careful notes made by Roman officials, meticulously recording the emperor's explicit instructions for revising mythological texts. One internal note specifically states, "The emperor wishes to emphasize clearly that Mars directly aided Romulus in establishing Rome. Passages that don't fit this narrative must either be removed or revised to meet this goal." And this wasn't a one-time event under Augustus. It continued systematically with subsequent emperors such as Nero, Domitian, and especially Commodus. Secret Vatican records clearly illustrate how these emperors deliberately used mythology to craft divine-like images of themselves, solidifying their absolute rule and divine legitimacy in the eyes of the people. A particularly striking example appears in the secret documents related to Emperor Commodus, who openly declared himself the living incarnation of Hercules. Ancient manuscripts held secretly in the Vatican reveal that Commodus directly instructed court officials to rewrite myths surrounding Hercules, ensuring every heroic deed and legendary exploit clearly mirrored the emperor himself. In a letter to officials responsible for editing mythology, Commodus explicitly stated, "Ensure that whenever people read about Hercules, they immediately think of me. I want everyone to clearly see that I'm not merely Rome's ruler, I'm a living embodiment of the gods themselves." Yet the Vatican archives don't just preserve these politically modified myths. Even more remarkably, they also contain the oldest original versions, unedited texts almost entirely unseen by the outside world. These original manuscripts are kept in another highly classified section, guarded under the tightest possible security, because the Vatican knows these original versions pose a serious threat, not only to the authority of the Church, but to the world's understanding of ancient Roman civilization itself. The original myths don't glorify absolute power or portray emperors as divine figures. Instead, they often celebrate humble heroes, republican values, balance, and human complexity. An ancient text known as Liber Antiquus Romanus, the ancient Roman book, written around the 2nd century BC, portrays the gods not as symbols of ultimate authority, but as profoundly human-like figures who embody both noble virtues and deep flaws. Crucially, in these original narratives, political power was never portrayed as absolute or blindly sacred. These secret original texts hidden within the Vatican archives reveal a truth that the Roman Empire spent centuries carefully concealing. The earliest myths were not propaganda tools, but mirrors reflecting the true contradictions, anxieties, and genuine aspirations of the ancient Romans themselves. Among the most significant documents stored in this highly restricted area of the Vatican archives is a collection titled Origines Fabularum, Origins of the Myths, containing Roman myths in their untouched original form, free from political manipulation. In this remarkable text, gods like Jupiter, Mars, and Minerva aren't portrayed as symbols of absolute authority or dominion. Rather, they are depicted as deeply conflicted, human-like figures possessing both admirable qualities and notable shortcomings. In one original version concerning Mars, the god of war, Mars doesn't simply embody glorious Roman victories. Instead, he expresses hesitation, inner turmoil, and haunting regrets over the violence and death he himself causes. Such passages were systematically erased or heavily edited by later Roman emperors, turning Mars into a flawless icon of endless triumph. A revealing note preserved in the Vatican archives, penned by a court official responsible for editing myths during Emperor Domitian's reign, clearly illustrates the purpose behind these alterations. The emperor insists we erase all references to weakness or doubt among the gods. Citizens must always perceive the gods as strong, powerful, and perfect, just like the emperor's own authority. By reshaping mythology, Rome effectively constructed a perfect system of authority, where emperors were regarded as living representatives of flawless divine beings. The Vatican fully understands that if the world discovered these original myths differ so dramatically from the versions commonly known today, the image of Rome as a perfect, idealized, divinely sanctioned empire would be deeply undermined. But why has the Vatican remained so determined to hide these original manuscripts for so many centuries? An internal Vatican document from the 8th century, authored by a senior church official, directly addresses this question. We cannot permit the original myths to become widely known, as they carry a dangerous message, that power itself is inherently complex and imperfect. If people understand this clearly, they will ask questions we cannot answer. We must ensure the gods remain perfect and elevated, preserving the social order we've carefully constructed. Other confidential records describe scholars granted limited access, expressing shock upon realizing the sheer scale and subtlety of mythological manipulation performed by Roman authorities. What's most astonishing is the intricate and detailed manner in which Roman emperors altered these stories. They didn't just rewrite myths, they completely reshaped their meanings, creating an idealized belief system designed to maintain absolute power. Moreover, these original myths pose profound questions about human nature and authority itself. Rather than celebrating blind obedience or absolute power, the earliest versions constantly challenge leaders, questioning their responsibility, morality, and humanity. The Vatican recognizes that if these messages became widely known, ordinary citizens would inevitably question the legitimacy of authority, including that of the Church itself and the very structure of society. That's precisely why these original mythological texts remain under the strictest possible protection in the Vatican archives, not just to preserve their historical significance, but to safeguard the social stability the Vatican has worked tirelessly to maintain for 2 millennia. And while authorized scholars occasionally gain limited access, they are always under strict surveillance and bound by solemn vows of absolute secrecy. From rewriting myths to strengthen political power, we've discovered that it wasn't just history's surface, but even humanity's most sacred stories that were manipulated by hidden hands. But the history of the Roman Empire wasn't solely shaped by powerful emperors or altered mythologies. Hidden even deeper, in the darkest recesses, lies a world most of us have never even heard about, the mysterious realm of secret societies. Among the most carefully guarded documents in the Vatican archives is a highly classified set of files known as Acta Saturnaliae, the Saturnalia files. These shocking records reveal that Saturnalia, the famous Roman festival celebrated with feasts and revelry at the end of each year, concealed something far more profound, a powerful secret society operating behind the scenes, subtly influencing Rome's most critical decisions. These secret notes make it clear that Saturnalia was never merely an innocent celebration marked by parties and temporary social role reversals. Beneath the festive masks and joyful chaos were clandestine gatherings of an elite council consisting of Rome's most influential figures, high-ranking officials, military commanders, priests, and wealthy aristocrats. This secret council met in absolute secrecy during the darkest nights of Saturnalia, in hidden chambers deep underground, completely off-limits to outsiders. A confidential Vatican document vividly describes the rituals performed at these secret Saturnalia gatherings. These meetings begin at the darkest hour in sealed chambers far beneath the city streets. Members are cloaked entirely in black robes, their faces concealed, illuminated only by the flickering glow of torches. Strange sacred rites are conducted, and Rome's most critical decisions about its future are made right here, in total secrecy from the public eye. These hidden files don't merely confirm the existence of this secret Saturnalia Council, they also provide evidence of exactly how it exerted control and manipulated Rome from within. According to the records, council members utilized mysterious symbolic maps, strange, cryptic charts, to determine the fates of regions and peoples Rome would conquer or destroy. In a chilling private letter, one council member explicitly wrote, "Our decisions appear directly on these sacred maps. We place our hands upon them and decide which lands shall prosper and which must vanish forever. The destiny of the entire empire rests solely in our hands, the hands of those who dwell in shadow." The Vatican doesn't only tightly guard records of these secret rituals, it also rigorously restricts access to any information regarding the identities of the Council's members. However, leaked documents reveal that even Rome's most powerful emperors, including Augustus, Nero, and Marcus Aurelius, either belonged to this society or had close secret connections with it. In one carefully preserved confidential letter, Emperor Nero addresses a mysterious figure known only as Pater Saturnalis, writing, "I have done exactly as the council instructed. Rome now burns, but from its ashes our absolute power will rise stronger than ever. I hope the council finds satisfaction in my actions." Most fascinating of all, the Vatican archives not only keep records of this secret society, but they also carefully guard the symbolic mysterious maps once used by the Saturnalia Council. These aren't ordinary maps, they're filled with cryptic symbols, winding lines, and strange markings that researchers today still cannot fully decipher. Within these Vatican records, the Saturnalia Society isn't merely described as a shadowy group holding quiet influence. Instead, it's portrayed as the very heart of Rome's true power. Secret writings from the 2nd and 3rd centuries state clearly that no crucial decision, from choosing emperors and launching military campaigns to managing the empire's economy, could proceed without the secret council's approval. A secret internal document carefully preserved deep within the Vatican vaults and written in ancient Latin vividly details how the Saturnalia secret society manipulated even the process of imperial succession. We never openly choose the emperor. We do it from the shadows. The successor is selected by this council, and our task is to ensure the public believes everything happens naturally, that the gods themselves, rather than we, have chosen their leader. The most intriguing revelation within these records is the existence of a mysterious figure known only as the Pater Saturnalis, the father of Saturnalia. According to confidential accounts, the Pater Saturnalis wasn't merely the leader of the secret society, he was also regarded as the keeper of Rome's destiny. His identity has never been disclosed in any official text, and the Vatican archives maintain strict secrecy surrounding every detail related to him. But what truly alarmed the Vatican about the Saturnalia Society wasn't just their immense historical power, it was the nature of their clandestine nighttime rituals. Secret files describe ceremonies conducted in complete darkness, involving masked members, esoteric symbols, and even symbolic animal sacrifices performed to decide Rome's future. One classified document, penned by a Roman priest around the 5th century, reveals this clearly. During the rites of Saturnalia, cryptic prophecies were recited, symbolic patterns were drawn on ancient maps, and critical decisions were made. No emperor dared oppose this council's choices, because all understood clearly that true power did not rest upon the throne, but rather in these dark chambers beneath the earth. This revelation raises profound and unsettling questions. Do we genuinely understand the full history of ancient Rome, or have we merely glimpsed the small fraction those in power wanted us to see? And what further secrets about this society is the Vatican archives still concealing? Secrets not even the most dedicated scholars have ever been allowed to access. Secret Vatican records also indicate that the Saturnalia Society didn't simply vanish with Rome's collapse. On the contrary, documents from the 6th and 7th centuries strongly suggest the society continued to operate quietly and discreetly, even as Rome itself ceased to be the world's political center. The Vatican has maintained absolute secrecy regarding these revelations because they fear that exposing the long-term existence and influence of such a shadowy organization could gravely undermine the Church's spiritual and moral authority. An internal Vatican letter from the 14th century spells this out plainly. We cannot allow the world to discover that Rome's authority, and therefore the Church's own authority, was once manipulated by mysterious figures hidden in shadow. If these records ever become widely known, our credibility would be irreparably damaged. This explains precisely why the Vatican archives don't merely keep these documents hidden, they also enforce exceptionally strict oversight. Researchers granted rare access must undergo rigorous security vetting and are required to pledge absolute secrecy regarding any discoveries they make. From the Saturnalia secret society to shadowy powers operating behind the scenes, we've discovered that Rome's history isn't simply a tale of transparency and open power, but perhaps the most astonishing secrets hidden deep within the Vatican archives aren't merely confidential letters or secret rituals, they're ancient maps. Maps that reveal an entirely different Rome, a hidden world never before mentioned in official documents. Secured deep within the Vatican's most heavily guarded chambers are ancient maps known as the tabulae occultae, secret maps. These aren't ordinary charts of trade routes or territories officially acknowledged by the Roman Empire. Instead, they unveil secret pathways, hidden cities, and sacred places that have never appeared on any official Roman record. In a confidential 4th century record, a senior cleric named Lucius Rufinus described his astonishment when he first encountered these maps. When I first laid eyes upon those maps, I simply couldn't believe what I was seeing. They depicted another Rome, a Rome hidden in shadow, connected by secret roads leading to sacred places completely concealed from the outside world. These maps didn't just reveal secret routes the Roman Empire once utilized, they also explicitly marked locations where great treasures were buried or lost. According to these secret notes, Roman emperors and elite officials buried countless treasures in hidden locations, accessible only by these extraordinary maps. One classified document titled Inventarium Thesaurorum, the Inventory of Treasures, details these hidden places. Among the most intriguing entries is a massive treasure concealed beneath an ancient underground city called Roma Secunda, the Second Rome. This city is never once mentioned in any official historical text. It appears only on these secret ancient maps. The Vatican archives describe Roma Secunda vividly. This hidden city lies deep beneath Rome itself. It was specifically constructed to safeguard the empire's greatest treasures, sacred artifacts, forbidden books, and secrets capable of completely rewriting history if ever revealed. These secret ancient maps preserved within the Vatican archives aren't mere faded sheets of parchment gathering dust. They're keys, markers guiding us toward a deeper, more dangerous Rome hidden beneath layers of earth, existing in parallel with the city we believe we know. In confidential notes carefully kept hidden, Vatican scholars vividly express their amazement and sometimes fear upon first examining these maps. A 15th century scholar named Alessandro di Siena recorded in his research journal, "When tracing the routes marked on these maps, you don't merely see familiar cities, you discover places whose names history has completely forgotten. There are routes leading directly underground, connecting the empire's secret sacred sites, locations even I would never dare to seek out. These mysterious pathways, marked with strange ancient symbols, sometimes resembling mystical signs, lead to repositories of dangerous treasures, banned manuscripts, and hidden temples belonging to secret societies unknown to the outside world." One particular secret map found in the Vatican archives, titled Tabula Secunda Romae, Map of the Second Rome, explicitly states, "This secret city lies directly beneath the busiest streets of Rome, constructed entirely in darkness, with endless tunnels and hidden corridors. Here, the most sacred and dangerous artifacts are concealed, a place only the empire's highest-ranking figures would ever dare enter." Secret documents also reveal that this hidden Second Rome wasn't merely a vault filled with priceless artifacts or banned manuscripts. It was, in fact, the true center of power in ancient Rome, a center whose existence was known only to a select few, and whose authority even the most powerful emperors had to quietly acknowledge. A confidential record from the era of Constantine explicitly states, "Even the emperor must understand that Rome's true power doesn't reside in palaces or upon thrones. It lies deep beneath the city, where the keepers of secrets and guardians of treasure control every critical decision." So what exactly is the Vatican archives concealing about these maps, and why have they remained hidden for so long? A secret 17th century letter from a high-ranking Vatican cleric provides a chilling explanation. If these maps were ever to fall into the wrong hands, the world as we know it would change forever. Behind each secret route lies knowledge humanity has never been ready to confront. We keep these maps secret not just to protect the Church, but to shield mankind itself from truths it cannot yet understand or control. Furthermore, the Vatican fully realizes that revealing the existence of this hidden Rome would prompt profoundly unsettling questions. Could what we consider history merely be a fragile surface hiding much deeper, darker secrets? Another classified document written in the 18th century by a Vatican cardinal states clearly, "The Second Rome doesn't merely hold physical treasures, it houses knowledge humanity isn't yet prepared to face. Truths about the true nature of power, the real past of mankind, and secrets capable of plunging our world into chaos." This explains why the Vatican archives not only safeguard these maps and related documents, but also maintain an incredibly strict system of protection and surveillance. Scholars granted rare permission to research them face severely restricted access, must pass stringent security checks, and remain under constant Vatican supervision. Our journey into the dark secrets buried deep within the Roman Empire, carefully hidden for thousands of years inside the Vatican archives, has led us to an unavoidable conclusion. The history we know, the stories we read in textbooks and official records, have never represented the full truth. The history we're often told isn't simply a recounting of what happened. It's a carefully selected narrative, edited and reshaped by those in power to protect their own interests. From Nero's infamous fire in Rome to secret societies and lost maps, we've witnessed how real power isn't built solely on transparency. It relies just as heavily on hidden truths carefully concealed from public view. Never before has the relationship between power, religion, and historical revision been clearer. The Roman Empire didn't just dominate through military force, it also controlled through cultural, spiritual, and political manipulation, rewriting myths, editing sacred texts, and sometimes completely burying inconvenient truths. True power isn't merely control over people or territory, it's control over memory, belief, and even what humanity is allowed to know. The Vatican archives stand as the ultimate symbol of this power, where truth is treated as a precious yet dangerous asset. The Vatican doesn't just preserve historical documents, it actively protects, regulates, and at times deliberately conceals them. They do this not merely to protect the Church, but to maintain a social order they believe the world isn't ready to change. But are we, with all our modern advances in science, awareness, and ethics, truly ready to face the darkness within our own civilization? Do we possess the courage to confront our deepest secrets, the unsettling truths, and accept that the civilization we're proud of might rest on foundations dramatically different from what we once believed? Perhaps the secrets hidden within the Vatican archives are precisely what we need most to understand, because only by truly knowing the darkness can we fully appreciate the light. History isn't merely a record of events, it's a powerful reminder that truth is complex, layered, and sometimes frightening. Yet within that complexity and fear, we learn humility, caution, and vigilance in the face of power and truth. Ultimately, the story of Rome's dark secrets leaking from the Vatican archives isn't meant to undermine our faith in history or civilization. Instead, it's an essential reminder that history must always be approached with clear-eyed objectivity, relentlessly questioned, and examined under the harshest possible light. Only by doing so can we mature as a civilization, strong enough to face our own inner darkness. And as we conclude this exploration, one final question continues to echo in our minds. Are we truly ready to know all these secrets?